It's summertime, and we're focusing on our community. Here on Stay in the Water, we're focusing on organizations and foundations and people who are making a difference in the community. It's Stay in the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville, and today we have with us an organization that's focusing on mental health in our community. Once again, we want to thank you for joining us here as you always do every Sunday morning as we broadcast from the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, from none other than WNSB, Hot 91, the soul of VA. You have been supporting us for now over 5 years. That's right. We've been on the air 5 years with this message, this show coming to you every Sunday, and we've been very blessed in order to do this. So we want to thank you, the listeners. We want to thank all of you for your support, and we want to thank you for continuing to help us bring the message to you. We hope that you're staying safe out there. We hope, especially in this weather and the heat that we have, we want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Make sure that you're getting all the hydration you need. And on top of that, let's also look after our neighbors. For those who are in our community, those who are our next door neighbors, and those who are in our families that may be going through a hard time, that may need a box fan or may need a little help on their bills so that they can stay cool as well. Make sure we come together and help out our fellow neighbor. So once again, for those of you that have been listening to the show, the month of June and July, I started what's called our Community Conversation Series. With this, I love to focus on people, foundations that are doing the work of the community. Now, you know, on this show, we bring movers and shakers and policymakers to discuss issues important to you. And we do that, and sometimes it's fairly heavy. But this part of the year, and at the end of the year, where we talk about the Good News series, this is an opportunity for us to talk directly to the community, to see what's going on the ground and the good things that are happening. So today I have with us one of my very good friends and someone who I believe is 10 toes down in the community from the very start, even before she became an elected official, none other than former councilwoman Danica Royster. Danica, how are you this Sunday morning?
I'm doing wonderful on this Sunday. How are you, Eric?
Well, again, I'm enjoying my summer. You know, of course, the fall's getting ready to start, so I'm trying to milk it as much as I can.
Understood.
Absolutely. So listen, I mentioned that you are a former Norfolk City Councilwoman. How is the former political life going?
One thing I always tell people, I might not be elected, but I'm always the honorable, which means I'm always, as you said, 10 toes down in the community and always doing community work, hence me being on one of the best radio programs on a Sunday morning because I'm here to bring the information to our people. So might not be elected anymore, but still definitely in service.
Absolutely. The number one talk show Sunday morning on WSB. We love to have you on the show, and we love also the things that you did, especially when you were elected. But definitely it's still honorable in the things that you're doing. You know, one thing that we have you on today for to talk about your work in the community, focusing on mental health. Tell us a little bit about Surviving Through Mental Health Family Matters.
Yes. So this Thursday, July 17th, we'll be hosting the second annual Surviving Through Mental Health. The theme this year is Family Matters. This is going to be spotlighting not just always mental health awareness, but also healing and resilience in our communities and within our own families. We felt that this conversation was long overdue because we have to highlight the impact of generational trauma and the power of community in supporting mental wellness across all ages and all generations. So that's going to be taking place this Thursday at 5 p.m. at Chrysler Hall in Norfolk.
So this Thursday is the second annual. You know, when we were talking before the show, I asked, how many years have you been doing this? And you said this is just the second year. Because I remember we actually featured you last year as well because of what this actually means. You know, in addition to what you're focusing on, let's talk about mental health awareness just for a few moments. You know, pre-pandemic, no one really talked about mental health, right?
Right.
I mean, we had people, and of course, it was the wrong thing to do, but we had people in our community and family and at school and around us that, that were dealing with mental health issues, and they say, oh, they're just they're just crazy, or they're just this,
Mm-hmm.
or and people that would self-medicate, with alcohol
Right.
and drugs and things of that nature, or no, they're just acting silly. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, sometimes in schools, our children would be placed in special ed classes when they're really
Mm-hmm.
not special education, but they're dealing with something else. Tell us why you wanted to focus on mental health. Why does it matter to you?
Personally, for me, it matters because have also been diagnosed with some mental health challenges. I survive and thrive daily with depression, anxiety, and attention deficit disorder. And to your point, I was that little black girl in school who, the teachers thought that something's gone wrong. She's not paying attention. She's distracted. No, that wasn't what it was. What it is attention deficit disorder, which means my ability to learn is just a little different, along with the way that I manage my own emotions. So I thought it was important not only to just advocate, but to be a pillar within our community to show that this is what mental health can look like, as well as to disrupt the idea of how you have to show up if you've been diagnosed. I've told people repeatedly that your diagnosis doesn't determine your destiny. So essentially, you can own your diagnosis and still take your power back. But when I was on council, I felt that I needed to utilize my platform to not only raise awareness, to advocate, but also do some, taboo breaking and also the stigma behind mental health. Fortunately, there's been a lot of data, particularly when we look at Black men and women as it relates to the increase in suicide rate, along with persons just being misdiagnosed. And a lot of that has to not only do with healthcare access, but also education. So I always tell parents, don't fault yourself because you did the best you could with what you know. But one thing you can do is once you know, you can't pretend that you can't now go seek support. So that's what this event was about. It's not only about let's have this conversation with other Black and brown mental health professionals and youth and persons, but also we're going to have a mental health resource fair to be able to meet people where they are, whether you're on Medicaid and need some type of assistance, or you're, someone who is in private practice looking to see how can I serve the community, and what better way than to bring them all together in the same space under one roof where everyone has wellness and healing in mind.
We've talked before about utilizing your personal story. And a lot of times, foundations are built around individuals that either have a passion, for that particular cause, or actually were impacted, by that as well. How has it been for you? Because again, you're college educated. I mean, you're in financial services, helping individuals build wealth across generations. Former elected official, did phenomenal work while on council. How has it been for you to be able to express yourself and use yourself as that example of what you can be in spite of?
It's been an honor, honestly. I don't tell people I'm the poster child, but I do believe that I have purpose, and I don't believe that if given a platform, you abuse it. You use it to help others. And also, I just feel that our leadership, a lot of our people get encouraged when there's a level of transparency there. I used to joke with some of my constituents that sometimes they see elected officials as these Greek gods, and we're on Mount Olympus, and they're just these mere mortals, when the fact of the matter is, no, I am actually a person. I go through things. I experience grief, and I feel that when people say, wow, you go through the same things I do and you still are able to show up, how? I need to share that it's not like I'm not Superwoman. I don't have any super juice or anything in my refrigerator, but I have support. And what support looks like for me has been therapy, has been utilizing tools, has been creating boundaries and utilizing language to also educate people about my diagnosis and why I show up the way I do and why I communicate the way I do, as well as to educate people on this is something that's attainable for you as well. So let me show you. I can show you better than I can tell you. So for me, even navigating the day-to-day is also a practice. Before our call, before we got on the air, we had some conversations about what just happened last week. And I had to even take some personal time and just disconnect. And I said, I'll go read that messy bill later. But right now I need to just sit with what this means, and that's a mental health practice. And that's something else we're going to be talking about is not just, mental health in the family, but, how our consumption of media, our consumption of blogs, our consumption of news, how is that also playing a role in our mental health as well? Because that's something that's very serious, drawing the line between being overconsumed and making sure you're still informed. As you know, it can probably be a little bit of a tightrope walk, but I know I'm preaching to the choir on that, but also that's something that's a reality for people, and they need to figure out, how do I manage these emotions? So that's one of the reasons why this conversation is also so critical and relevant.
Absolutely. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric LaVille, and you're joining us for our 2025 Community Conversation Series. Today, we have with us the Honorable Danica Royster, former City Councilwoman for the great city of Norfolk, discussing the second annual Surviving Through Mental Health Matters. This Thursday, that's right, this Thursday, July 17th, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. at Chrysler Hall here in Norfolk off of St. Paul's Boulevard, you're going to be able to engage in quite a bit of dialogue, resources, and impactful series about mental health. Danica, let's talk about the series itself. Let's talk about what individuals, when they walk through the door at 5 o'clock, tell us what's going to happen.
People are going to come in. You're going to be greeted by persons smiling. Everyone in attendance will be given a ticket. We have some great resource bags that we're going to be giving out. And you're going to make your way into the larger auditorium of the Chrysler Hall, where we're going to have speakers. Our mayor, Dr. Kenneth Cooper Alexander, will be giving us greetings. And then from there, we're going to start some of our panel discussions. Some of our panelists are going to consist of professionals from the medical field, such as Norfolk's very own Dr. Keith Newby. We have Dr. LaConda Fanning. And then we have also some persons who are in the educational space as well. We have representatives from various universities across Hampton Roads. And then we also wanted to make sure that we took some time. I'm going to be hosting, during one of the portions of the program, a fireside chat where we're going to talk about the intersection of mental health care access and legislation with Speaker of the House Don Scott and Delegate Benita Anthony. And we're going to close out the conversation with some community members, representations from the Tidewater African Cultural Alliance, along with the Chamber of Hispanic Progress, and also some of our youth. Because oftentimes we have these conversations about kids, but we do not include them. So they're going to give us their perspective and an opportunity to share what they experience. So that might be helpful for a few. And then when the program concludes, we'll actually have dinner available for those who still decide to stick with us. And we're going to have a multi-resource fair with over 20 mental health providers, along with some of our community organizations, such as the Norfolk Public Library, Life's Journey Urban League, Cornerstone Therapy. The list goes on and on. So this is going to be, as the name says, family matters, but a family-friendly affair as well.
Absolutely. And there is another very important part to this second annual Surviving Through Mental Health Matters series, and that is free and open to all with complimentary parking.
Yes, complimentary parking in Norfolk.
Absolutely. Listen, of course, you just mentioned so many partners that are going to be a part of this, and I want to kind of delve into a few of them in just a moment as we take a look at the services that they're offer and what the public, I just want to say the public, what our community family, right? Because we're all family, right? What our community family will be able to take part in. But tell us about the partners and how you're able to make this free.
Well, one of the biggest partners has been the city of Norfolk. And when I was on council, one of the things we always talked about was availability versus accessibility, and also utilization of our community taxpayer spaces. So one of the things that the city of Norfolk did last year, and by the hand of the mayor, is declared July as Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And there was a commitment from the city, along with the Norfolk Community Service Board, is how can we meet people where they are? How can we support those? So we looked at the matters of transportation, accessibility to a space that's going to be large enough, accommodating parking, as well as recognizing the hours between 5 to 9. For most parents, that's dinner time, or I'm just coming off work and it's been a long day and I might have not had lunch since 1. So we had to see what are all the things that we can do, as well as we've had some really great partnerships where they believe in not only the mission of what this organization, Project ORF, and the NCSB is doing, but also they have a commitment to community as well. So when we shared about the impact, that was where we got people invested, whether it was their time, their talent, or their treasure. One of the big sponsors I have to mention is, for example, IKEA. The furniture that will be on the stage and all the assembly and all of that, they donated that for the organization and for the purpose of this presentation, which, by the way, and I hope I don't get in trouble for that, please stick around because we're going to be having some really good raffles to be able to support community members. Once again, free. You do not have to buy a ticket. And if you picked up what I was laying down, I mentioned IKEA, wink, wink. But also the bigger part is being able to share and tell people, let us come to you and help you get the legwork about what your organization is doing. So we have, for example, another one of our donors was Crunchy Hydration, who's going to supply all of the drinks throughout the evening for all of our guests. And they come from energy drinks to stuff that makes you calm, to stuff that helps you sleep, stuff for bloating, etc. But when they heard about the mission of what they're doing, they said, we've always wanted to continue to be able to connect with community. And I tell persons all the time, I think one of the biggest disconnects that we're missing is just communicating. If we're having conversation with one another and also just having the willingness to ask for support, you'll never be shocked. You'll be shocked about how many people believe in your mission, want to align with someone who's doing good work, and also want to join up with you in making impact.
Well, you said raffle off some great gifts. All I got to say with that is, all right, all right, all right.
Oh, and dinner is free, too. So let me add that in there as well for the participants. Dinner is free and will be catered by a Black-owned, because Family Matters, husband and wife team at Pour and Stay Full as well.
Oh, that is absolutely wonderful. Well, listen, this is shaping up to be more than just, something to the mental health, but it's shaping up to be, as you mentioned, a true family event, especially during the summertime. You talked about a few special guest panelists. I'll come back to that in just a moment, but I want to talk about the resources that individuals have there. Now, in the very beginning, we discussed your personal story, and a lot of people do deal with that. Their children are suffering, and of course, when we look at the economy today and the impact that various legislation is being passed that's going to impact the wealth of our community, what resources will be available to help a lot of them? And before you talk about that, I want you to put your financial advisor hat on now.
Okay.
We just had legislation passed that is basically, quote unquote, supposed to cut taxes, but it's going to cut services to individuals such as Medicaid and, of course, SNAP and food bank, food for individuals that need help making ends meet, filling that gap. But also, it is disrupting the student loan repayment for individuals with student loans. And, of course, student loans are great because it helps us to afford education to do better. But also the repayment is just as important because it gives us flexibility to be able to afford everyday life, rising costs, and be able to continue our lifestyle while still paying back what we borrow and we're able to obtain through an education. From your perspective, financial advisor, what is going to be you believe the financial and impact the mental health strain on our Black community as it relates to that?
Eric, that's such it's deep, and unfortunately, I wish we had more time on the show for me to delve deep, but I'll try to do my best. Currently right now, and I'm not even going to touch on the bill yet, but let's look at our lives post-COVID, and there are persons who are still recovering. Over 40% of Black businesses closed, and I tell people all the time, you can't even think of a Black business as just brick and mortar building. Remember, most Black business owners, they are the providers for their families. They, that income from that business provided for a family, as well as those services normally provided for communities. So there was impact there. Following, the new administration coming in January, I think the most recent report showed, last month, we're showing that 70,000 Black women lost their job, which is, 30,000 down from April. When you look at the households in our community, most of them are financially led by Black women. So if you have those persons within their families who were the sole providers or breadwinners, that is now income that's been taken away. So those are two layers. Now I'm going to type onto this bill. So with this bill, now there's financial debt that's being required to be paid out immediately. So if I'm a Black woman who have just lost my job, and yet I have, someone knocking on my door essentially saying, you need to pay us this money, but I have not been able to secure employment, this is now some of the factors that play a role in that racial wealth gap that we talk about. Another thing is Black women, they are graduating with higher and professional degrees than any other class of persons. But we also have the most amount of student loan debt. I believe on average $38,000 more than some of our counterparts, and that's the average number. I know some of your listeners are saying 38,000. Girl, please, I wish I have 100,000. I understand you, sister. But one of the things that happens is, now how am I supposed to create a life for myself, or the so-called American dream, where they tell you, go to school, get an education, buy a home? How is that going to be possible if I'm finding myself having to choose between paying my student loan debt, paying my rent, and putting food in my fridge? And, what if I have children myself that I'm having to raise in a household to support? So needless to say, the burden is real. And essentially, one of the things that are my biggest concern is not only the lack of education behind this bill and how it's presented, but also, let's call it what it is. That bill is just so empty as well, and I think it was intentionally made to hurt our persons in our community. And that's my opinion. I'm going to stick to it, because essentially you can't tell me that this is something that's going to be good for our communities, when so many will suffer, as well as those who are caregivers themselves, which we know within our community, having a village mindset. Yeah. Many of us are not only taking care of our own kids, but we might also be supporting other family members, i.e. your own parent.
Yes.
So there's so many layers to this that's why it's important for persons to, I'll say it and I'll say it over again, vote. I tell people all the time, mental health is on the ballot. Education is on the ballot. Accessibility is on the ballot. So when you say you don't do politics, look around your house, look around your community. You are sitting dead near in the middle of politics. There is a choice being made about everything you do, eat, and consume. So you have an obligation to participate, because if you do not, choices and decisions will be made for you. As I told someone the other day, that the several million people who chose to stay home, this was a choice, and we're unfortunately now reaping some of the consequences of those choices. But one thing we can do is reclaim our power, because in the state of Virginia, we have an election every year. So I always tell people we might have to wait a while for what's happening in the White House, but you have a choice you can make as it relates to what's going to happen this November in the state of Virginia and in this great Commonwealth.
That's right. In 4 months, we will have a decision. So make sure that your voice is heard to be a part of the decision, because as the Honorable just stated, mental health is on the ballot. So when we talk about that impact, losing a job, losing income, losing services that help you to help take care of family members, and then the impact of getting the calls from the mortgage company, from the finance company, from this, and not have enough money to buy food because maybe your food assistance is being cut as well. All of that impacts your mental health. And, again, you become angry and maybe you lash out, and sometimes people self-medicate, unfortunately, with other substances, which causes additional problems.
Right.
If an individual is dealing with something like that, when they walk through that door of this annual event, what services can they lean toward that will help them?
Well, one of the things that they'll be able to go to is, once again, the resource fair, where we'll have actual representatives from Norfolk's very own Norfolk Community Service Board, where they're oftentimes NCSB, most people think about them just for homeless services. Well, actually, no, there's a mental health component, as well as they have intervention and prevention services for those who have been battling with some substance abuse issues as well. Along with, we will have a host of providers who cater to our communities that are utilizing Medicaid. So that way we're making sure it's accessible, not for just those who have private insurance, but those who desire support, but they're currently getting some type of aid as well. We'll also have some various resources from our library to be presented, and some other foundations because one of the things I never want someone to come to an event and be like, this was good, now I have to wait. No, there's going to be other organizations there, from like the Up Center, the YWCA, NAMI Coastal Virginia, where they're doing events year round. Every month there's something going on. So what we're hoping is that we can connect the community members not only to the resources, but it'll also allow them to become parts of community. We have conversations surrounding grief. There's unfortunately persons who have lost loved ones to some of their mental health diagnosis. So there's also a community for that, as well as for parents and maybe some other caregivers to connect and say, I need a safe space where there's some other persons where they've gone through what I've gone through. I'm not going to be judged. I can show up authentically as myself, and I know that I'm seen here. And that's also the essence of Family Matters. We wanted to create and embody that idea of the village. We are a village. One of the parables talks about there's no disconnects in the links of our chain, and we wanted people to come and feel connected. I want you to look across the aisle and see someone else shaking their head with you, someone else shedding a tear and handing you a tissue, because essentially we're all going through it. As the kids say, they call it crashing out. Some days are better than others. And another thing we want people to take away is it's okay not to be okay. And it's okay to have a bad day. Oftentimes, we just feel like we just got to layer ourselves out with tasks and work to distract ourselves from the things that we can't control. But it is important to have an outlet for where can I go, or who can I talk to who's my person, where I can vent, where I can get some tools, where I can get positive feedback, or I can get, maybe a stern talking to every once in a while. I have my own therapist, and I love her for that, to kind of put my head back in the game of essentially doing life. Because essentially we're better together, and we're always better when we're well.
It's okay not to be okay, because there is always help around the corner as a family. I love that. Once again, Surviving Through Mental Health, Family Matters, this Thursday, July 17th, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. at Chrysler Hall here in the great city of Norfolk. You'll have an opportunity to engage in mental health and wellness resources, community support programs, special guest panelists, and yes, food, refreshments, prizes, raffles, and giveaways, and so much more. And the best part is, it's free and open to the public, who we call our family friends, because it is a family affair with complimentary parking. Danica, again, as always, or the Honorable, it is so good always to talk with you. And as I mentioned, always 10 toes down in the community, whether elected or selected to do what you are doing. Look, we appreciate you so much for being here on Stay the Water. I'll let you have the last word.
Yes, I just want to say thank you again for you also utilizing your platform to be able not only to educate our community about not just my event, but the issues that are impacting our community. And I think that it's important that, we have representation, not just from the side of politics, but also in spaces of media, because who better else to tell our story than our own people? And so I want to once again encourage everyone who's listening, not just to come out to the event. If you're unable to make it, you can make sure you can follow us online. The website is going to be www.norfolk.gov/surviving through mental health. Sign up. We're going to actually still be maintaining a list of persons who registered, so that way we can keep you abreast of future events as well. And if there's any way that we can, once again, the way we advance as a community is by supporting one another. So let us know what support looks like, and we'll make sure we do our best to support you and yours as well. Be blessed.
And thank you again for joining us for Stay the Water, where we bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss issues important to the community. Until next time, be good, be great, God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Carrie Washington, and you're listening to State of the Water with award-winning host Dr. Eric Claville.